back to the garage in Spain. My name's Gary. Today's video is the May update, and it shows the work that I've achieved on the layout during April, where some of the projects have been finished and others are still ongoing. So if you join me now, we'll go around the layout and I'll show you what I've been up to. And starting down at the front of the station, I've finally added an actual door to the station, a little bit of signage and some posters on the main wall near the entrance. But more importantly, the station overbridge for passengers is now coming along well. I've managed to finish the handrails on the side of the steps. We've put down some surface on the top. And there's a short video during this update which will show you how I went about constructing the banisters, handrails on the stairs. Continuing down on the station side of the layout, you'll notice now that the tunnel portals for the hillside have been worked on. I've managed to get the complete portal in with the buttresses on the side, or abutments I think they're called. I've had to do a bit of extra work on the actual hillside itself just to take into account the extra work needed to secure the portals in, but I'm really happy with those. I've still got the internal wall cladding to do inside the tunnels, but that's been allowed for and there's plenty of room for me to work on that. And the same is true on the approach to the station side of the hillside, where again the portals are in and secured, and I'm really pleased, especially with the capping that I've used on the top of the walls there. And again, there's a little bit of remedial work has gone on just to secure the portals in behind on the side of the hillside. So overall, the hillside's coming on quite well. Scenics on that will be the next thing I hope to achieve, and obviously I'll report back on that as soon as they're done. Moving along from the hillside, past the signal box, coming down to the goods area, and you'll see that I've created and finished a cattle loading dock. And this started off life as an experiment to see if I could create something totally off pat, scratch build, and I'm quite happy with the results. Perhaps not as prototypical, sorry for the P word, as people might want, but you know, rule one applies, and that's my little loading bay for the cattle. And then swinging around to the left comes into another job that's almost finished, and that's the coal yard. I'm quite pleased with this. I've started to do some basic ground cover with colour. Built a little coal office, and next to that you can see there is a small carriage that's being used for the workers to keep their tools in and have their tea breaks. And then the coal staves and a short siding just sufficient for the trucks to deliver the coal. So again, very pleased with that, and that's coming on really well. Over at the TMD, I've not really done much at all, other than a small low relief building. I found these online and have downloaded and put one together just to see how they fit in with the layout. I'm quite pleased with those, and I should probably make some more to make a bit of an industrial scene behind the TMD. So again, pretty pleased with that. And a little bit of added stuff in the car parking area next to the site office. And again, there's a lot more to do on that. I'm going to get some fencing down behind to delineate between the railway and obviously the public areas. Not much change last month on the steam yard, although there's obviously been quite a bit of work done by the steamers because they're very low on coal. But that may have something to do with the fact that I haven't got enough coal to run the coal depot and the loading bay for the steamers, so that will have to be sorted out soon. Swinging around again on the other side of the station platforms, get another view of the stairs and a little bit of signage that I've put on, again just while usually waiting for things to dry. There's something to do. Some homemade signs on one side and some proprietary ones that I found online and used to just add a bit of extra detail. So these are the sets of steps that I've made for the station bridge. They're made out from plasticard and basically painted up first of all, a set of treads put in, but obviously they're going to be a bit useless without a handrail. So the idea of the handrail that I'm making fits across like so, and once finished obviously on the layout that should give a good representation. So the idea of today's video is to show you how I've actually constructed this, the method and the madness involved. So I'll show you the parts that I've got ready and how I propose to carry forward, and we'll crack on. So my first job in the build to do was to create a template to copy for each of the handrails. So this is based on plaster strip, which is 2mm square, and the secondary handrail, the support rail in between, is 1mm, and some 2mm tube plastic strip on the top. The dark black there represents the side panel of the steps, and then working on the angle between the elevation, which I think is around about 40 degrees, I've then cut pieces ready to mount onto the template before we complete the gluing. So for each side of the staircase, there's obviously one handrail, the initial floor support, the 5 interim supports, and then the safety supports in between. So I've cut all those and prepared them all ready, and I married each of those up according to the diagram and the template. And before I progress any further, I fix this onto something firm so that it doesn't move about while the construction takes place. So while we're waiting for the stick adhesive to dry and go tacky, the reason for obviously pinning this down or sticking this down onto the paper is so the bits don't move about. But one important thing is the secondary handrail only being 1mm square, I want to try and get in the center part of the posts. So to do that, I put in a small piece of card, which is 1/2 mm thick, in between each of the main posts. Whoops. It doesn't have to be very accurate, but as long as it doesn't touch any of the other items. And then when I lay the strip across between these 2 points, for example, that will be 1/2 mm up off the ground, which will therefore put that in the center of this post as opposed to on the actual post. The main handrail and the supports, they are equal dimensions, so they'll actually sit square with each other anyway. So I'll just do the other one and then we'll start. So with the spaces in place, all there is now to do is to get each piece ready and start the construction. Okay, once they're all lined up and ready to go, it's just a simple matter of picking them off, just dipping in a little bit of the styrene cement back onto the layout and securing them down. Having the semi-adhesive spray on is an absolute godsend, because that really does just give you that little bit of extra protection of things moving about when you're putting the glued pieces back. You get a little bit of play, which is really good, and once you've taken them off the first time, the actual pieces of styrene have a little bit of the sticky on them as well, so they tend to be a little bit more rigid on the template, which is good. I try not to overdose on the adhesive so that there's no unsightly blobs, and as I say, you've got a little bit of leeway before the glue starts to really set well, and then just using a small pin and a little bit of capillary reaction, a little blob of glue on the top of each one to make sure that the seal is there. And then, as much as you might want to rush to do some more, I leave it like that, and we'll come back to that once the glue has set. Okay, so it's been a couple of hours since the plastics are set. They're quite rigid now, which is all good. I've just made sure that my little secondary rails are all being cut to size before I start, because they're quite a bit fiddlier than the others. So again, it's just a case of a little bit of styrene glue and lining up in the frame. Making sure that's nicely in line before we go on to the next one. There we go. Okay, I'm just going to do a couple of these on camera, because it is quite difficult to look through the camera whilst putting these on. So it's going to be a lot easier for me to do these off camera, but just so you get the idea. And making sure those, as I say, line up nicely with the template. And if you remember, the little bit of brown card in there is just to give me a assistance to keep those dead centre of the frame. There we go. So I'm going to go on and do the other 5 sets that I've got here, and we'll come back to those once I finish them. Right, I've completed all 5 sets of the posts, and I'm going to leave those overnight to set fully before I attempt to move them from the paper. And so we'll come back when I've done that. Well, as you can see now, the handrails have successfully dried overnight, and I've taken them off from the self-adhesive paper. One thing I was going to show, and hopefully you'll see a little bit clearer on here now, is that by using that little piece of card on the original paper, you can see possibly there how the rail, the secondary rail, has actually set in between. So with that, just that 0.5 millimetre of card, it has set those rails here in the centre rather than on the edge of the plastic uprights. So I'm quite pleased with that, and I hope that that's given some interest to people and some ideas if you're going to set about using Plastistrip. And I'm sure there's many of you out there have their own ways of doing it. That's my particular way. It does help because as much as you try and keep everything nice and firm, something will always move at the last minute, so it is well worth using it. So, okay everybody, I hope you've enjoyed today's video of the update, and as ever I'd ask you to leave any comments down below, and if you have any questions about what you've seen today, I'll also try and answer those as soon as possible. What I would like is if people would like to subscribe, I'll leave a link up here, and at the end there'll be a short running session to see you out. Until I see you next time, bye from now.